Join me as I dive in to take a look at the whole little dilemma between the default apps situation on Windows 11. Because it's kind of strange and it's kind of annoying now that I'm seeing it myself. So let's talk about it in this video. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. My name is Kwaku, and again, today we are taking a look at the whole default app situation in Windows 11, basically how to switch between default apps and what's the problem with Windows 11's iteration of default apps, and how some people think it's like antitrust, causing for some antitrust violations and things. So let's turn over to the computer screen and jump into this. So here we are taking a look at my computer screen, and as you can see, this is obviously Windows 11, but in this video I'm going to compare it to the whole idea of default apps to or default programs that you'll run inside various file types compared to Windows 10s, because that seems to be where the whole comparison comes from. So going in, I also have Windows 365 opened up, and so that gives me Windows 10, since where I'm at, I don't have a Windows 10 PC right now. So here's how it looks like on Windows 10, the whole default apps thing, where you can choose default apps, whether you just want email, maps, music player, and so on. If you go through, you can see all of them. Then at the very bottom here, you also get reset to the Microsoft recommended defaults. And then you get, here is what Windows 11 only shows you, which is choose default apps by file type. Now, obviously, the Windows 11 one is laid out a little bit better, in my opinion, but this is essentially all we get in the current iteration of Windows 11's current beta of it. So you go through and you can change, you can change each default based on file type. So if you go through, you see all the hundreds of different file types here. You see how small my cursor is right there. Whereas if we jump into Windows 11 and let's say I want to do this, let's say I want to do default, and then I click default apps, you see here that you get a whole bunch of default apps, and you can click on each one. Let's say I wanted to change my web browser into some kind of other default. So let's say I want my web browser to be Brave, which is obviously now my default. When you click on Brave, you also then break down. It's not just one thing that you just change and it makes it your true default. There's a bunch of different options, and that's what I was seeing and I was hearing all across the internet and on podcasts and things like that, including Windows Weekly and stuff. There's a bunch of different like file formats and things like that. HTTPS, which is secure, and then if you go up, there's HTML and HTML. There's a whole lot of them here, IRC, and you can just keep going, the list goes on. Now, let's see what happens as we type in more things with default and see what pops up. It says, choose default app for each type of file, choose default apps, and then reset default apps, which is what we saw on Windows 10. So let's click on choose default apps. Now, if you choose default apps, like I said, it brings up the list of set defaults for applications. And then depending on the application, let's say Access, then you can see what is the default. And this is also kind of misleading, in my opinion, this little arrow here, it's a little box with an arrow popping out of it, because typically when I see that, I think in mobile and a whole bunch of other things, it typically means it's going to open it up in like a web browser for the most part, or in a different program. But when you click it, that's actually how you set your default for it. And you have to do that for each single one. And if I type in default for another thing and choose for each type of file, then it brings up that same list on that we saw earlier that shows you every single type of file, just like on Windows 365, where you see here on Windows 10 that it runs all the different types of the different file types that you have to do. But by default, on Windows 11, we do not get this screen here where all we have to do is simply click on email, and let's say I want to change email to Outlook. We don't simply just have one click. We have many clicks that we have to do in order to change it. And many people are saying that this is anti-competitive because Microsoft makes it essentially difficult to switch your default. And if you're like my mom or someone who's not tech savvy, pretty much nobody watching this channel falls into this criteria that I'm talking about. If you are like my mom, somebody who is not tech savvy, the average human being that just says, I don't want to use Edge, I just want to use Chrome, or I just want to use whatever. Having to click this, you know, search for it, and if you even know how to search for it, if the dialog pop goes away, let's say I want to make this my default. Having to see this screen here and then pick what is what, normal people do not know what HTML and HTML even stand for. They know, they've seen the PDF before, but normal people do not know what any of these dot extensions mean. They don't even know what an extension even is. All they know is that when I click on a link that seems to go to the web, it should go to the web and it should go into my desired web browser, and that's it. So I see where the whole default apps problem comes from, and I sincerely hope that Microsoft is planning on fixing this, because this is pretty bad. There's a lot of different file types here, and apparently this doesn't even include when you switch all of these things, say, over to Brave. This doesn't even include when you use Windows search here and then you start typing in things and then you search the web with it, because by default apparently this goes to Edge. So let's say I want to go to Google, type in Google on the Windows search on Windows 11, it brings up Edge. Even though HTML and all the other extensions, I can change it to Brave. By default, the built-in Windows things, and I'm not sure yet how to fix this, but by default, it does in fact go over to Edge no matter what you do. So if someone can help me out to tell me how to switch, like in the most, imagine if I was my parent, you know, my mom or grandfather or grandmother or whatever, someone average, completely average, that just buys a laptop at Best Buy, says, I just want a laptop that does X. Somebody tell me in the most basic terms possible how to explain to somebody like that how to just simply switch. Because yes, when you go into Brave and when you go into all these web browsers, you can change your default, and it usually pops up when you first install the browser. It says, do you want to change your default? And if you hit yes, then it normally should just change your default. But if the moment you miss that dialog, let's say you're in a rush thinking about something else, you have no patience or something like that, you're stuck back to this area here, where to a normal person, they have no idea what they're clicking on. They don't want to touch it. They don't want to ruin anything, even though we already know it doesn't ruin anything. So that's the whole dilemma with default applications. It's kind of strange. People are saying that it's because back in their earlier, like in the 90s or so like that, Microsoft fell into antitrust. And so they had to make it really easy to do it. But now that they're not falling, they're not really, people say they're not really a monopoly anymore. Then now they're just slowly sneaking their way to put these kind of things in place, while like Google's taking the hit, Facebook is taking the hit, Apple's taking the hit, and they're just kind of slowly putting themselves like into this kind of frame of mind. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below about this whole default app situation on Windows 11. And I sure hope that upon release later this year, they do fix it and bring back the old style. I'm sure there's been feedback about wanting this whole thing coming back, but who knows if they even see it? Who knows if they care to see it? Who knows if it's a corporate decision that, you know, the developers want the old way back, but the corporate is like, no. Who knows? But we can only speculate. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, and I'll catch you guys later.